Holy shit, I actually made a dev blog in 2 weeks. And I actually did enough work in that time to show in a video. So what have I been up to then? Well, the morning after putting out DevBlog 8, I transferred all of our tasks from HacknPlan to Trello. If you're unaware, these are task managers. They're very useful for knowing exactly what you're meant to be doing in a project. I moved to Trello because you can make these boards public, so now you can see what's currently being worked on. To be completely honest, I don't like Trello that much. They're far more aggressive when it comes to getting you to pay for their pro version, which is pretty damn expensive since you have to pay for each member in your team. They're basically the EA of task managers, so I hope it's worth it. I spent the rest of the first week working on third-person animations so the AI can fight. I'm using a combination of animations I had from the Wall 1.0 as well as some animations that I made myself. I'm not much of an animator yet. I've only been doing it for like 3 weeks, but it's pretty fun and it's really useful to be able to make my own animations rather than rely on somebody else to make them. Most of the work here was on getting the animations to integrate with the other animations we have. A few months ago there was an advanced locomotion system for free on the marketplace. This gives you pretty nice movement for a player character, complete with inverse kinematics and nice ragdoll effects. So that's been the foundation of the animations for the player and NPC. But that does mean it can be a bit of work to integrate my own animations into it. It's fairly easy, it just takes a little while to do. Once the animating was done, it was time to move on to making the NPCs. Instead of making the NPC completely from scratch, I used a method from Apotheosis where I basically made the player character and then duplicated that and changed all of the inputs to be regular events. This usually means the code gets much more compact and simplified since you don't need all this extra stuff to interpret what the player needs to do. The AI controller can just do exactly what it wants to do. Next up, I had to replace the placeholder damage function that the sword had in the last devblog. Getting swords to reliably deal damage was a struggle in the Wall 1.0. Problem was detecting when the sword crossed something so it can deal damage to it. A common method I've seen is to do a capsule trace from the base to the end of the sword every frame. Let me tell you why this method is shit, and if you like it, you're wrong. The problem lies with the fact that it can only do a trace every frame. This is fine if you have a beefy PC and a good frame rate, but not everyone does. And even for good PCs, stutters can still happen. Basically, the lower the frame rate, the fewer traces you're doing in your swing. It might only be 1/10 of a second where the sword actually intersects with your target. If you didn't render a frame at that point, guess what? You didn't deal damage. So I looked through some forums for like 2 minutes and discovered a better method. Instead of doing a trace from the base to the end of the sword, you create several points along the blade and do a trace from each of the points' current position to the one they had in the previous frame. This makes it impossible to have gaps in the trace, no matter how low your frame rate is. Lower frame rates only lower the smoothness of the curve the traces create, which isn't a big deal, so now I have 100% reliable melee combat, which is great. The NPCs animated and the swords dealing damage, it was onto the probably annoying task of programming AI. I'm hoping I can do this quicker than the Wall 1.0 and Apotheosis because I have a decent amount of experience in doing this sort of thing now. So far I've made a new and improved faction system using data tables. This is how the AI will know how to react to other NPCs in the world. The Wall 1.0 had a pretty bad faction system that would have been pretty difficult to add to. It only had 3 factions: Guard, Bandit, and Civilian. Now I can have as many factions as I want, so that's cool. Right now the AI can identify an enemy, run up to them, and attack. They can also die. I haven't made a lot of progress here yet since I only started this like 2 days ago, but I think by the next devblog, in 2 weeks, yes I'm still sticking to it, we should have these guys fully combat ready. Gobble and Mega Coolman have both been working on their stuff, but it's mostly background work. Things like improving the code to make it more user-friendly or just make it work better. Gobble has been improving his notebook system. He's added a pop-up notification that tells you when there's new information in it, and he's still got all of his cringy placeholder descriptions in here. I think he might have added some new ones. Anyway, I'm going to keep showing these in dev blogs until he changes it. Mega Cool Man is still working on the Sentinel. It needed some improvements to how it walked. Apparently the method he was using before caused a few problems. We also did a performance stress test to make sure these guys could practically be used in the game. So we had a whole bunch of them running around at once. And the frame rate barely noticed, so that's great. So far it looks like doing these videos once every 2 weeks is actually going to be possible, so long as I can do enough work in that time. It looks like these videos are going to have a slightly different format to what I used to have. Not that I really ever had a format, I kind of just wing it every time I make one of these videos. They're obviously going to be a bit shorter, and they'll be a bit more technical as well, going into the details of how I'm making these things. This isn't all I've been doing these past few weeks. I've been doing a lot of world building, stuff like naming places on the map and writing lore about the cultures and religions in this world. One day I'll show that kind of stuff off, but not today. It's still in the oven.